Hello, welcome to Blender Tutor. My name is Tom Latvies, and welcome to my first tutorial of 2013. In this tutorial, we're going to go over texturing a treasure chest in Blender, so let's get started. So this is going to be our finished result. I'm going to provide a pre-made model already for you. I will go over a little bit about how I created it, but mostly this is just going to be about texturing. And also, I'm going to go over a couple things actually in this tutorial. We're going to go over texturing. We're going to go over applying normal maps in Blender. We're going to go over creating normal maps. And then we're also going to go over a little bit of like the game engine physics, how I created all these coins kind of looking like they're just randomly assorted in the chest. I'll go over how I did that as well. So let's get into it. So this is the kind of finished scene before I rendered it in texture view. You can see pretty much looks as you would imagine, although I have all these crazy kind of leaves just floating there. I just kind of created giant wild piles of leaves to create the shadows in that image that you just saw. So to create all this over here, that's basically how I did it. So on top of that, I'll also go over how to create a material that you could use in cycles to use an alpha masked image. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with the starting file that I will provide on the website so that you guys can work with it. It doesn't come with any textures. I can't actually provide the textures themselves to you, but what I can do is okay. So what I'll do is I'll provide the link on the website for you. These are basically all the materials that I used in the scene. So this is for the leather straps. This is for the leaves. I believe I used this material for the bolts to make kind of like a rusty look for the bolts. This was used for the lock. I used a couple of these scratched metal materials for just different metal surfaces. I used this one, I believe, for like the metal brackets. And then I pretty much used all of these, all 7 of them, for the different parts of the chest. And then this right here I used for the seamless material for the sand. And I believe I used one other one, but I'll link them on the website. Okay, so before we really get into it, the other thing I did was I created, if you look at the coins, you could see they have the Blender Tutor logo on them. And what I did there was I actually just created a very simple texture in Photoshop. So let me open it up real quick. So this is the texture I created in Photoshop. Basically all I did was I took my font, I wrote the BT, I created a simple circle around it to make it look like a coin, and then I kind of just added some noise and then added a spiral blur, a radial blur on it to kind of give it a little brushed metal look to it. And then I took it into a program called crazybump, which, let me open up the site for you. So right here we have crazybump. It's just crazybump.com, and this is software that you could use to create normal maps from pretty much any texture. It's very simple to use and it's very helpful. I'm just using the demo version, and you can too. I haven't tried it for Mac yet, but for Windows it works quite well. So let me actually just open it up for you to show you kind of how it works and how I created that normal map real quick. Okay, so here is the demo version. You just click right here to open up your texture. And I will open up my coin texture that I created. I'm just going to load it up. And right here, this is kind of like how you want it to look. Do you want it to look indented or raised. For me, I wanted it to be raised, so I selected this one. And this is kind of like a little 3D preview of what your texture is going to look like. Now, the ball isn't perfect for this because it's going to be on a flat surface, so you could actually change what object it's mapped to see an example. I'm going to change it to the box so it's flatter. So you can see it's kind of doing some weird things to my logo. I just want it to be flat raised, and right now it kind of just looks all warped and weird from the different angles, and I couldn't figure out why that was. As it turns out, there's all these different options right here on your normal map that you could change to affect how that looks. And the one I had to turn down to get that proper was I turned down shape recognition. And as you can see now, it looks the way I want it to, although it's actually indented here where I want it the opposite. So you can just take it at intensity, and if I just bring that to a negative number, I think I brought it to like -10, you can see it's already raised like that now. So that's pretty much how I want it. Yeah, that's probably good actually. And I could turn up fine detail farther if I want better. Well, it'll actually affect the detail of the logo itself, and what I really want to affect is that kind of swirl in there. Right here in the options, you could turn on and off the different textures that it creates for you. If you look here, you can see it creates a displacement map, occlusion, so it creates some like fake shadows for you, specularity, and the diffuse, which is just my original texture, and then the normal map as well. Right now, it has almost all of them on except for the diffuse texture. I'm going to turn off the occlusion, and I'm going to turn off, well, I'll leave the rest on. And really all I did was played with these settings until I got something that I was happy with. Oh, here, so very fine detail is what I want. There we go. That looks better. And once I was happy with everything, since this is very, kind of a minor part of the scene, I don't need to give it too much more detail than that. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I could just save these. And you could save only the normals, or you could save all textures, which is what I did. I created its own folder. And as you can see, it actually already saved them all out. So I'm not going to resave it, but that is how you use the software. It's very simple. On top of being able to adjust the normals, you could actually adjust all of them, the displacement, the occlusion, specularity, and diffuse. I didn't really play around with those for this, but depending on the texture you're using, you probably would want to adjust all of those until you got all of the settings to your liking. So I'm going to close this for now. And I'll just go over how I created the coin real quick. It was, very simple. Oh, 1 second, actually. Okay, I'll turn on my screencast keys so you can see what I'm doing. So for the coins, all I did was I added a circle. And I'm just going to leave it at the 32 vertices, because I don't want to add a subsurf to these coins, because I'm going to have about 300 of them in the scene, and I don't want that many objects with the subsurf. It would just slow my computer down until I wouldn't be able to move through the viewport anymore. So I'm going to keep it at 32. I'm going to turn this to vertex mode and just select all of them, extrude in a little, and then I will just fill that. And then here, let me turn off my lock for now. So I extruded up. Extruded up. There we go. just to give the coin some depth. Then extrude out a little bit. Extrude down. And then just, repeat the process. So that I'm going to extrude in. Extrude up till it's about even thickness. And then I'll look from the top view just to extrude in about the same amount here. And then I'll fill that in as well. And now I have my coin. All I had to do now is if I turn on smooth, you're going to see it gives me that weird look right there. So we're just going to add right here and right here. Just hold down Alt and right click. And then on this side, Alt Shift right click to select both of those edge loops. And I'm going to hit Control E and add a mark sharp. Oh, you know what? We're gonna have to add a lot of those actually. So grab that scene or that edge loop. You know what? Let's go into edge mode right here. So just Control Tab to get that selection. Grab that, grab that, grab this one, and grab that one. And let's mark sharp on all of those. And then the other thing we're going to do is grab this one again and grab this one again. And I'm going to mark seam as well because we're going to have to unwrap this later to apply that normal map. And we're going to need that part separate from the rest of the coin. So now what I could do is I can add my edge split modifier and turn off edge angle and only keep on sharp edges. And now, from close up like this, you can see it's still kind of jagged, but in the scene when it's kind of a much smaller object, this is going to be just fine for what we need. So let's save this real quick. I'm going to create a new one. Okay, and let's just call this coin. All right. Now, what I did here was from the top, first I'm going to apply the rotation and scale. And how I did that was with the object selected, I hit Control A, it gives me this option. I just selected rotation scale. And then what I'll do is from the top, I'm going to go into face mode now. Then hit Z to go into wireframe view. Hit C. And I'm going to just select all of these faces, the top and bottom center faces. And I'm going to, let's open up the UV image editor right here. I'm going to unwrap that. And you know what? Let's just unwrap it, project from view bounds. It'll fill the entire area. And now I could open up my texture, coin textures. I want my coin logo normal map. Open that up. And I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna just expand that. No, that'll be good. Let's leave it like that. And now what we'll do is give it a material. And we're gonna actually have to create two materials for the coin. So let's call this inner coin. And then add another one that we'll work with a little later, just called outer coin. So right here, this is going to be, let's just, yeah. With that, we'll assign the inner coin, and just for our sake right now, I'm going to color this a little differently. And you can see it's all of it is selected with the inner coin right now, but I actually want the outside not to be mapped to this normal map. So what I'm going to do is if I hit Control I, it'll select the invert. It'll invert the selection. It'll select everything that wasn't selected before. And now I could go up here and go to outer coin, assign, and now you could see there are two different materials. So with inner coin, I'm going to open up the node editor up here. Zoom in. And really, I don't want a diffuse. I want a glossy. And I'm going to have it at about 0.2, I believe. Let me check. So yeah, I think at a 0.2, and for the color, I actually wrote it down. So in the hex value, it'll be FFBF00. And then we will add an image texture. And it's going to be that the normal that we just had. So it'll be here. And when you're working with normal maps like this, what you're going to want to do is actually in the image texture change it from color data to non-color data. I'm not sure why, but that uses the color information in the image properly. And with color, I think it's a little flatter. So yeah, choose non-color data, and then we'll add a normal map node right here. Just take color, put that in there. And then all we have to do is just move that here. I believe I left this at 1, strength 1. Now just let's edit this one real quick. This is also going to be a glossy node, also 0.2, and we're going to want that to have the same color. So FFB F00. There we go. And let's just look at it real quick. Cool. So it is looking the way we want it to. As you can see, I actually have a HDR image in my environment right now. I used that for the final scene, but it's also actually pretty useful for this. Anything glossy like this, it's nice to have some random reflections. So that's looking about right. That's what we want it to look like. Now let's go back to our main scene. Ooh, I'm going to... I'll move that to another layer. Oh, so that is on 3 actually. There we go. So you can see there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on here. Here's an old lock that I had actually. I'm going to delete that. So this is a box. Okay, so we'll go over the game engine right now real quick. You know what? I'm going to save that for later actually. Let's just start texturing actually. So first what I'm going to do, all of this stuff is actually parented to each other. So if you grab this bottom, aside from the lock, if you grab this bottom section, I'm going to grab the lock as well. I'm going to just straighten this out a little. And then if you take this top part, you could actually just hit RX and close it like that. It actually even has hinges on the back that open and close. I didn't actually create a armature for this or anything since it wasn't going to be animated, but I suppose you could if you wanted to. So let's just close that almost all the way. Cool. And then you could also rotate this right here along the X as well. If you wanted to fully lock this. Oh, looks like our lock did not move with us. Oh, yes it did. That was weird. Alright, so let me just see. Oh, I'm going to parent that together really quick. Control P to parent. And then this top part, I'm going to also parent that to the chest. So now everything should move. All right, cool. So I'm just going to go over really quickly kind of how I UV unwrapped this, and I'm going to go over the textures I used, and I'm going to go over setting up those materials, but I'm not going to spend the whole time UV unwrapping this just because it actually took quite a while to unwrap and texture everything. So I'm going to go over the basics of what I did, show you how I did every single individual piece, and then I'll let you do that yourself. And then I'll jump ahead back to once everything's textured, and I'll go over lighting, rendering, and then compositing. So I started with the base right here. And you can actually already see it's kind of all cut up into pieces because this is actually, instead of just being a full box, it's individual pieces of wood that are each their own piece. So yeah, it does look like these are actually all UV unwrapped already, but I'm gonna delete that. I'm going to clear the seams. I'm not sure why they're not clearing though. Weird. Okay, well, as you can see, there are no actual seams selected right now, so I'll kind of just show you how I unwrapped it. So with this, you want to kind of hide your seams. So I figured I would do them at the bottom. And for this one in particular, actually, it's kind of hard to see everything. So when I was working on this, I would hide everything else. So with this selected, now if I hit Control I could hit H to hide that, and now I only have my box. And now I would do the exact same thing with this. Select one side, then hit Control I, H. Now I only have my one piece. So I know this is the front panel. I'm going to be looking at it from the front. So in the back right here, I won't see this. So what I could do is add, I'll mark a seam right there. I'm going to mark a seam up these walls right here. And I'm going to actually just mark all of the little edges right here. And now if we were to unwrap that, it will basically do what that just was. Although I did end up rotating it right here. So let's actually open up one of our pieces of wood that we were using. So in my textures, as you can see, I downloaded all of these and I just kind of started selecting them at random. So I know that here, we'll rotate it like this. And I know this isn't actually wide enough. So in fact, if I unwrap cube projection, you know what? Let me do that. Okay. Well, this is how I worked with it actually. So what I was doing was I was straightening out these UVs right here. So I've hit SY0. Oh, I'm sorry. SX0. It'll straighten those out. SX0. And then these look fine, but I might just clean these up as well. So SY0. And basically what that's doing is when I select them all, I'm scaling along the Y only and then hitting 0 so it flattens them all out along one line. So what I'm going to do actually is take this and I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to call this one Wood Chest 01. And I ended up making about 3 or 4 different wood materials. Go 2. So for now, I'll just do the 2. I'll assign it to this piece. And let's see. Okay. So what I had was I had the diffuse. I also had a glossy node. So I'll grab a shader, glossy. I'm going to need a mix shader. And I kept that at 0.05. I wanted it mostly the diffuse color, just very slightly shiny. And it was a 0.2 for the gloss. So then I also had the image texture, obviously. So I will go to image texture. And so this is woodfine 0042_1_L. So I'm going to go find that really quick. Wood. There we go. So what I ended up doing actually was I thought this one, a few of them were a little too bright because the wood in the picture almost has like a light glare on it. So it's a little washed out. So what I did was I actually added a brightness contrast node. And just very slightly in the brightness, it was negative 0.025. And the contrast was a 0.2. And then also what I'll do is I'm going to add a color mix. I'm going to change this to multiply, and we're going to use this to adjust the bump value and put this in the displacement. So this, I used a 0.3. So let's just look at that real quick. Yeah, so everything's still keeping its old version. So what I did here was we could actually look at it as I'm adjusting it now. So I just chose everything, scale that up. This isn't a tileable texture, but what I ended up doing was I kind of used it like that anyway because here we go. So I'm going to actually scale this down like that along the Y. And then obviously these are the top and bottom panels. These are far too large, so I'm going to move these up. And these as well. I'm going to shrink these down. And then this, move in. This, move in. And what I did here was, since they're not tileable, I'm going to have this weird line here, but as you saw in the final image, there's actually going to be leather straps over that. And we're never going to actually see inside of the chest because it's going to be overflowing with gold coins. So it won't actually matter for us in this instance. But if this were a problem for something you wanted to use this for, then you could definitely find a different wood texture on CG Textures or anywhere else, and you could just use that instead. But this is the one I liked. I liked how it looked. So that's basically how I did it for each piece. I would unwrap each individual piece and do the same thing. If I hit Alt H, it's gonna bring back everything else. So let's just go forward. So that is how that was textured. Up here was the exact same method, although that looks nuts. So I'm gonna kind of, I did it slightly different for this top. So with this selected, I'm going to hit Control I, hide. This was actually a little easier. What I did was, for this inner piece right here, zoom in a little. For this piece, I just unwrapped both. So hit mark seam. I mean, really, I could just box select it, so I could go like this. Since this isn't straight on, it's a little difficult to work with. So I mean, I could do what I was doing earlier and just select a piece of this, Control I, H. Okay, now you just select all of that, and then I just unselected the inner. I don't want any faces selected, just the edges. So with that selected, mark seam, and then I just need to unwrap one little area of that because it's going to unwrap like a straight line basically. So I'll mark seam there. So now if I take all of that, unwrap, it's going to do something like that. I'll take this and pretty much just line that up so there isn't a seam on it like that. And I'll take this, scale it up. And I don't like those black lines like that, so I try to keep that only on the edges. Take that and try to make those the same size. And now all I would do is add that wood chest texture again. And each time, so if I used wood chest 02, it would be the exact same node set up here, just with a different image texture file right there. So now if we look at that in texture view, you can see only those pieces of the top used this texture. Obviously, a few of them used a different one, but that's how I unwrapped that piece. So now let's bring back everything else. Oh, we have some things starting to get their textures back. So let's do the leather straps next. Oh, those actually aren't grouped together, so I'm going to have to select all of them, then Control I, H. So I'm going to just delete that actually. So for one, let's get rid of this texture. All right, so it's pretty easy how I unwrapped this. I actually, if you look, I deleted the back face. It was just a long rectangle. I deleted the back face because you're never going to see it because it's pretty much pushed through the wood. And so it's just kind of like a lid or something. So what I did was I unwrapped these four corners. Mark seam. Select that. Unwrap. You can see it does it like that. It's kind of sloppy, so once again, size. So I just fix those real quick. Same with that. And this top one. And obviously these are far too large. I could just scale along the X to bring those in. And then I just opened up my leather image texture. So go to my textures, find my leather, and just scaled that up to about there. Now this was another one that I used this exact texture right here. So this was my diffuse color, but then I also used a normal on this. It was probably overkill. I was just kind of playing around with the normal mapping in general, but you could probably just use this exact texture as a bump. So let's go into that. Let's create a new one. Let's just call it leather for now. So I had the diffuse. And what I did was I, added my image texture. Leather. Add that there. I had a glossy again, and I, once again, just used it very lightly. Just to get a little shine on the leather. Add a mix. There's just a 0.1. Roughness, 0.02. I wanted it kind of harsh, sharp on there. I did add normal for this, but for this tutorial, let's actually just add a color, and let's see how it looks just using bump mapping. So let's go like that. Let's keep it down to like 0.3 for now, and let's just look at that. So, rendered. I mean, yeah, that's... Whoop. That's gonna be good. We don't, yeah, I mean, it was kind of overkill to have that anyway. So that's good. I would say keep it like that. Maybe, that might be a little harsh on the bump mapping. And also, that still might be a little big for me. I might scale it up a little more. Cool. I mean, when we look at it through the camera view, it's going to have to be so zoomed in for you to even see much of that detail anyway. So that'll be fine. Okay. So let's bring everything back. All right, so let's do these brackets now. These right here, I did the exact same way. I unwrapped them the exact same way. The underside is not there. So they're basically just the exact same leather straps, just curved. These bolts, well, yeah, I'll get to that. So let's do the brackets. For now, I actually left these all UV unwrapped for you, because what I ended up doing was I UV unwrapped one, and then I just duplicated it 7 times and placed it on all the corners of this. Alt H. Yeah, because, I mean, it's a pain in the ass to have to unwrap every single one separately. So I'm just going to leave it unwrapped for you. But as you can see, what I did was I just, once again, if I just move this, you can see the back of it is actually not there, just like the leather straps. So I only cut out the front, so it looks like it's one piece of metal. And then I unwrapped the other edge as well. So that's a better view for you. And then I would add like one cut down there, so that outer ring basically is its own piece as well. So if we take all those, unwrap them, give me something crazy like that. Then what I did was I took my metal texture, I believe I used this one. So I'm going to unwrap that again with the texture selected. Let's do Smart UV Project. Yeah, that might be better. It says scale that down along the X so it's more square. And just kind of place that in the middle of... Yeah, I mean, it's fine. You could scale it up. This is such a minor detail. You're not going to even be able to tell. Okay. So once I'm happy with that, create a new texture or a new material. Metal brackets. And for this one, This one's a lot simpler, actually. As you guessed it, I have the diffuse and I have a glossy. I have a mix shader. That is a 0.3. This will also be a 0.3 for glossy. And then all I have is my image texture. And open metal bear, put that right there. Open up a mix node. Go back to multiply. Bring that down here. Put that in the bump. And it was very slight because it didn't want to look so crazy. I think it's just a 0.05 or something. Let's check that out. Yeah. That's probably good, although I could see this is looking a bit sketchy. That's too small, so I'm going to actually scale that up. There we go. So look, you want to be a nice high enough res texture that you could get, if you want to render it at a high enough resolution, it doesn't look blurry or anything. So as you can see here, this was lined up improperly. So let's try to fix that a little. There we go. So you want to make sure that that's kind of covered up. Your seam right there is covered up by these leather straps. Cool. All right, so now we're just going to do this metal bracket right here, and then the bolts, and then we're gonna we'll do the lock as well, and then we're gonna move on to lighting and rendering. Oh, we still have to do the coins as well. Sorry, this is running long, guys. All right, so let's do this one. It's another one where I believe the back of it is cut out. So as you can see, it's cut out the exact same way. I just put a seam on all 4 corners. And I believe I even used the metal bracket texture on this as well. So, let me just select metal bear again. Scale it up a little. And just select metal bracket. And now if I look at that, yeah, I believe that's correct. Let me actually open up my finished image and check. Yeah, that's the same material. You can see it's the same material as the brackets. Okay. So for these, for all of the bolts, I had just created one material and used the same texture, but just different parts of it. I kind of used a rusty metal texture for those. So let's actually create a new one. Let's just call it rusty bolt. And now if I unwrap all of those, or if I go into edit mode anyway, hit A to select all. As you guessed it, they are just half spheres. The other side's just completely empty. So I could just unwrap them without having to worry about anything. So I just get 4 spheres like that. And now I would open up my metal rust image. So it was this one, this metal scratches. Now scale along the X to make those round again. Scale those down a little. To select just one, I just select one vertex and then hit L to select all the linked vertices. And I would just move these into this rusty area up here. And I mean, actually, this is really high resolution texture for such a small bolt, but I did it the same thing for these larger bolts as well. So let me go to rusty bolt. And as you can see, they're all unwrapped already, but that's exactly what I did. Is I just placed them all over all of this rust up here, which might seem kind of crazy. I mean, you could just find a better texture, I suppose. I liked how this looked, but you could definitely find just like an all rust texture that you wouldn't have to place so specifically. So to create the material, what I did was I believe it was pretty simple. Obviously, there's no gloss on those. So what I did was I will just add a texture. Open up my, I believe, metal scratches right there. But then color. But then also, you know, add our little multiply node. But then displacement. I think it was like a 0.3. And let's just look at how those look. So yeah, those are, that's how I liked them. Same with that. Cool. So we can actually keep that in textured view. All right. So what we have left, we have the lock. This upper part is the same as the bottom part. I did it the same way. All of these were, so this one was another one that I kind of unwrapped the top faces. So let's see, is that selecting the bottom as well? Yes, it is. So select all of that. Control I, H. All right, so just select all of the top faces here, go into edge view, and then delete the inner edges. I just want basically that border and that the inner border and the outer border. I'm going to mark seam and then do the exact same thing for the bottom. Let's see if I hit, yeah, it's not going to really do what I want. And then, nope. So select all that, do the exact same thing, mark seam. And then obviously we need to also select one of these inner corners, mark the seam, and then one of the outer corners as well. No, actually we don't for this piece because you can see I cut off that end because it's intersecting with another piece, so you won't see it. So that'll be good. I used a different texture for this one actually. I believe in this one, I used the metal bear. It was like kind of that, yeah, the metal bear kind of looks like just scratched metal. So select all that, unwrap. I'm going to grab these two, stretch them out, and we'll call that scratch metal. And for that I did it very similar to the other metal, so I'm going to have my glossy. I'm going to have my mix. What is that? 0.3. 0.1 was it? No, that's a 0.3 as well. And then we just add our image texture. So we have bare metal. is it? There we go, metal bear. It's gonna be this one. And we'll just add our little multiply node now. All right, 0.05. Let's take a look at that. And I'm gonna actually just scale that up even more. I want that to be pretty high resolution. So, cool. Ooh. Looks like it's taking a bite out of it. All right, so cool. That's about what I wanted. Alt H, bring everything back. Let's take a look. Cool. So from there, let's just do these handles real quick, and then we will do the lock last, and then I'll get into the creating the coins. So with this, if you look at it, I just added, it's just the ends are open since you don't see them. So all I did was unwrap one. I just basically hit Alt right click, selected an edge loop that was underneath so you wouldn't see the seam. Marked a seam, unwrapped it, and I used the same one. I used this bare metal texture, so we just select, what was it, scratched metal. And I did the same thing for these both. They're just basically circle, cylinder, donuts, whatever they're called. And I selected the inner edge loop and then one outer edge loop like that. Did that to both of them. Select both, unwrap, get this. I'm going to add that scratched metal to that as well. So now if we look at that, that's what we get. So let's do this lock. Ooh, that looks wacky. All right, so once again, let's hide everything else. All right. So what I did was it's kind of annoying, but I had to select this whole outer ring. There we go. Mark a seam on that. And then I also selected the inner one, which I believe is all one piece. Cool, so that's at least convenient. So mark seam on that. And then I'll just select one of these inner ones, mark a seam. See what I'm doing there. And then once again, I'm going to mark a seam around this outer edge. Mark seam. I'm going to do that on the back as well. Mark seam. And then in this inner piece, I'm going to mark a seam and mark this seam. And then if I go into face select, I select those bottom pieces. Then go into edge again. Deselect that center piece. So now if you look, I just selected basically the bottom square down there. Mark seam on that. And then I grabbed this long piece like that. And if you if you zoom in real close, you can see there's actually a tiny piece at the bottom as well. So I mark seam there. Mark seam there. Cool. And I believe, well, actually, we'll have to add one more seam. We can just do that on the very bottom. We're just going to have to select that, basically. And make sure, all right, that goes from one edge to the other. Cool. Mark seam. And I believe that is everything that we want. So if I select that whole piece, just hit unwrap, I get this wacky looking shape right here. So this is the one I used the tileable rust texture on. This was honestly, I didn't love how this turned out, but I mean, this could be improved upon, or you can make it metal, or you could even find like an image of a lock and just map the texture to it like that. For this though, I wanted it to look kind of old and rusty. I didn't love how it turned out, but let's just take a look anyway how I did it. So we'll create a new texture. I'll call that rusty lock. And I will go to image, open textures. Here we go. And with that, I just scaled it all up because it's tileable. So that is okay for us. Oh, it looks like something didn't unwrap correctly, actually. I'm going to have to go back and look at that really quick. I have a feeling this is going to look very strange. So let's just create this material really quick. We'll just add our image texture, our rust. There we go. And then we will add displacement. There we go. Let's do 0.15, see how that looks. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. Let's see how it looks all rendered. You know, that actually looks okay. Turned out okay. For what it is anyway. I mean, like I said, we could probably find a better texture for this. So let's take a look really quick. There's our beautiful half-finished treasure chest. I'm going to leave it up to you to finish the rest.